Hello and welcome to Discover Dorico August. Thank you for joining us. There's lots of YouTube videos available of things you can watch. So thank you for watching mine. If there's any questions or problems with volume today, then please let me know in the comments. I'll keep an eye on those today. And if anybody has any questions about video quality, I know sometimes it can be odd depending on your system. There's a cog in the bottom right-hand corner of the video window. So if you hover over the video and look for that cog, then there's an option there where you can choose the quality settings, and you can choose 720p if possible, but hopefully that will make it look very nice. You'll also notice today, due to a request I had from somebody, that I'm now going to be showing you things like mouse clicks. So it's now decided not to do it, hasn't it? But I'm going to show you. Okay, we will quit this and start again. A great start. I show keystrokes so you can tell which shortcuts I'm using, and mouse clicks, please. There we go. So you'll get a red kind of flash as I click on something, just so that you'll be able to see what it is I click on, because sometimes I've been told I do things a bit quick. So anyway, welcome. Thank you for coming. Of course, the big news this week for us was that we've released version 1.1.10. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in there, and I'm also going to discuss some layout questions we've had about things about using frames, or here's a particular case that would be useful. So to start off with, let's look at some things in 1.1.10. What's new? If you may well have already, and if you haven't, then go and look at Daniel's blog, which is blog.steinberg.net. The latest post on there is all about the update and things that are in it, if you want to read through those. Of course, the resources page, so it would be steinberg.net/Dorico. Click on the resources section and you can get the download, of course, from there for the update. And there's also the version history PDF. So if you want to read all of the details, then this version history PDF will tell you all about all of the things that are in it and the shortcuts for things. It is worth reading because there may be things in there that you will miss otherwise, or that we've forgotten to mention, but which may be really handy for you. I'll try and include a few today as well. So hopefully by one method or another, you'll find out what all the things are in the update. And if you want to comment on anything that we're talking about today, then in the live chat, just come and say hello and ask me questions in there, and I'll keep an eye on that as well. Now, one of the new things in 1.1.10 is that there's now some example projects. If you're new to Dorico, then they will probably appear in the hub, which is the thing that appears when you first start Dorico. So up here we have Hub, Open Hub, and where your kind of recent projects are and that kind of thing, you'll find the example projects in there. But if you've been using Dorico for a little while, then they won't necessarily appear in there because it'll be your recent projects. So you can have a look on your computer. On Windows, your C drive is probably your main drive, and in users public, so not your user area, but the public user area on your computer, there's a Dorico example projects folder. If you're on a Mac like I am, then you'll find on your hard disk in the users folder, there's a shared, which is the Mac equivalent folder. So not my user area, but the shared folder. And there's a Dorico example projects in there, along where you'd find your Sibelius example scores, for example, but the Dorico example projects. There's 7 files in there, alphabetically, anything from Coldplay to Winstead. And there's different types of examples. So there's some choral and some bits of orchestral and that kind of thing, which includes the Thomas Hewitt Jones Doric Overture, which is the file that was played live at the launch event for Dorico last October. So you can have a play around with those files, and if anything's, if you want a file to kind of have a look at, try some things out, maybe see what's possible, break a few things, then go with one of those example files. Now, let's look at just a bit at some of the new chord options. So you know, of course, from 1.1 where the chords feature was added, I can press Shift Q. I've got my chords pop over. I can play a chord like, let's try something like this with some extensions, and it will then display the chord to me. And if I was, let's put a couple of these in. In fact, well, let's make them both the same. Can I play the same chord twice? I can. Good. The positioning, of course, has figured itself out nicely, which is good, so that it's missed hitting anything. Now, in version 1.1, you can edit this. You can double click on it and edit the chord. And if you're in engrave mode, when you double click, of course, it would have sent you back to write mode. But now when you're in engrave mode and you double click on a chord, you get this new edit chord symbol appearance. And this is just somewhere that you can come and you can say, actually, I would like to edit this chord for some reason. So you can select all of the individual items and you can drag these around if you want to position them somewhere else. You want a bit more spacing, a bit less spacing. You want to change individual elements. So you want your minor to be displayed differently just for this one chord. This is only editing this one chord. You've got extensions here if you wanted to change something with the extensions. So let's say we want to drag this one down and 7 up a bit and press OK. It's just going to edit that one chord in my piece. The other one has not changed. If I double click on the other one, oops, made there by accident, then I can edit this one. I can do different edits to this one. You'll also notice that here, when you choose some aspects of the chord, it will select them both together. When you double click on those, you get a composite component editor, composite, and you can drag the items around in there and individually change those items as well, or add to them or anything else, which again will change just that one particular chord. So now I've got 2 edits to the chord. And you can change each individual item. Now, generally, you shouldn't need to really do this. You'll probably find that one of the options in the in engraving rules will probably do the kind of things you want. So, for example, dragging that sharp up slightly, maybe you just want to change to superscript or subscript. You know, maybe that's the option you want. And there's all the presets and things in here as well that you can change. And we looked at this one. We've looked at this one before. And if you haven't been in here before, then in engraving options, in chord symbols, come and have a look at all of the options you've got. However, if you can't find the option you want and you need to make a change to the same chord throughout the entire piece, then when you've read all of these options, you get all the way to the bottom. It's a bit like when you have the terms and conditions and you have to scroll all the way to the bottom before it'll let you press OK. You have to look at all of these options and all of the spacing options and everything else before you get to this little button, which is new at the bottom, which says Edit. And if I click that one, it gives me the project's default chord symbol appearances editor. And in here, it's showing me the single overrides I've created. So here's the first one, and here's the second one. And I can choose between these and it will display them. And then if I want to, in either of these, there's a little button down here that says promote to project default. So if I click that button, it's promoted it to this top box here. So the project default appearances now has my edit in it, and I can see that edit, and I can make changes to it still if I want to. And down here is the other single override. So if I don't want that one anymore, because I've decided that that one's not particularly useful, I can remove my override. There we go. So I still have my project default here. And you can in here, at the top section, you can enter chords up here, and you can add those as new project defaults from this dialog if you want to as well. So now I'm going to close this dialog, and I could leave engraving options open, but while I'm all on one screen, I just press close. So now both of these chords are now showing the same. Because the first change I'd made, I've removed that change, then it's no longer doing that. So that chord had gone back to being the default. I've made a new default, so my chord now displays this way. So there's all sorts of changes you could potentially make in this dialog. If you want to send me some of your favorites, then I'm happy to look at those as well in some of the other sessions. But I just wanted to kind of show you may, if you haven't already, there's a new video that Anthony's done, which also explains about the chords and the new options in there. The best place to find it, actually the quickest option at the moment, is to go to Daniel's blog, blog.steinberg.net, where he also talks about some of the new options and things in there. And of course, the version history PDF will detail all the changes as well. But I just thought it was worth showing a couple of those options. So a quick summary is, in engrave mode, when you double click, you're just changing that one instance of that chord. So if you need a little bit more space because something's a bit too tightly compact at that position in the score, just for that one chord, you can edit just that one. If you need to make changes overall, then you should be using the engraving options dialog. And in here, like I said, you'd normally choose one of the engraving options that we've already set here, maybe even one of the presets at the top. But if the option you want isn't there, and we know in some particular cases it may well not be, then all the way at the bottom of this dialog, use this new edit button, and you can change the default appearances for your project in there. A few of the things that are that are in the new version, and in case any of these have escaped and nobody noticed, or maybe they just haven't come up, there is an option I quite like, where if you're working with voices, you could use the filter options now, of course, to filter voices. So here's a piece with 2 voices for flute. But one of the things that you couldn't do easily was set a shortcut for it. And now you can. So I've now set a shortcut when I make a selection to just filter out the top voice. So it's filtering out any top voice, or I've got another shortcut to filter out any second voice. My shortcuts are Alt 1 and Alt 2, and some people might understand why. To set these up in your key commands section, so in preferences, key commands, if you put in voices, then in the filter section, there's an all downstem voices and all upstem voices. And because I've found that useful recently, I just thought I'd pass that on. If you want to set a shortcut for one of those, select one of these and enter your new shortcut in here, and you can then use that in any of your projects. There's also some other new things that in 1.1.10. So things like tempo changes here. If I just delete this one, you can see how I've entered it. So Shift T, of course, for entering these. And if I put, for example, Q equals, I can say 92. I can now also add to this, say 92 to 96, for example. Enter, and I'll get a range in there. So you can set tempo ranges and things if you need to. There's a new justify option for single stave systems. There's things like the audio export option. For some reason, MP3 had accidentally been missed off, but you can now export MP3s again. That's been reinstated. So there's all sorts of things that are in this new version. It's worth reading the details of, the documents of. But now a couple of particular cases of things layouts and things that that people have asked. I've just read Frank's comment. Alt 1 and Alt 2, yes, they're sort of vaguely Sibelius shortcuts for filters, for voices. Sorry. Hi Frank. Oh, and Hengler and Richard. Oh yeah. There's people writing comments. Any questions so far? There's a time delay, so I'll carry on. Write comments if there are any questions so far. So the first layout case I wanted to look at was to do with click tracks. So I'm going to do this from the beginning. So if you want to follow along, I'll do all of these steps from the beginning. So there's kind of no file to open to start off with this. So I'm going to start a new project. So I've pressed Command N. I'll press Shift P for a player, and I'm going to type piano. And I'm going to the first. So I've got a piano player in Flow 1. I'm going to call this Song 1, imaginative title. And then I'm going to click the plus down here, and I'm going to make Song 2. Hello, any Blur fans at this point? And then I'll click that one again. I'm going to have Song 3. So I've got 3 songs for piano: Song 1, Song 2, Song 3. Now here's a useful thing in this new update. You can click on the flow down here, and it will jump you to each song. So there's Song 1, Song 2, Song 3. It will jump. It's like a go-to option. So in Song 1, I'll double click on Song 1, and I'll say this song is going to be in 4/4, and it's going to have some notes. It's a very exciting piece. I'm going to select all of those. So I've just done a shift select there, and I'm going to press R to repeat, just have something to go on, and I want to make sure it fits onto music on at least 2 pages. So there we go, there's Song 1. And then on Song 2, I'll do the same. So let's say this one's in a different key. So Shift K for key signature, capital D to be in D major. And guess what? I'll put this one in 3/4, and we'll have another very exciting piece. And I'll select that one and press R again to repeat that. So it goes on to at least 2 pages. There we go. And then in song 3, you might guess what's going to happen. Let's go back to 4/4, Shift K, going to E, and let's do basically the same thing again, maybe a slightly different copy this time. So I'm pressing R to repeat that lots of times. So now, and the easiest way to jump now is, of course, in setup mode, song 3, song 2, song 1. Now, the request I had was that somebody wanted to put at the beginning of each song what the click track is and what was going to be doing. There's a question from Richard about how can I put multiple flows on the same page. The easiest way to put multiple flows on the same page, while I'm at this point actually, is in layout options. So Command Shift L is in page setup. If you tick the allow on existing page option here, then song 1 starts here and ends here at this final bar line, and song 2 automatically goes on to the next page. And then there's a final bar line, and then song 3 starts here. Now, the issue here is that if you wanted to put in an extra title in here, you'd then have to do a bit more changing of things to make things work and put extra titles in. So if I go into engrave mode here, one option would be to turn on the frames toggle and edit this frame so that there's only enough space for this music, and then to start another music frame down here, and to say to put this back into a master frame chain so the music carries on. And then you could put a manual title in here, so you could use a text tool and you could put a title in. So now song 1 has ended here, song 2 starts here, and you could put in a new title. So that's one option. It depends on the case again, so as to what we want to do, but that's one option for putting everything on the same page. I'm pressing undo multiple times to get back to where I was. There we go. So I've got song 1, 2 pages, song 2, 2 pages, song 3. Now, this particular case, what they wanted to do is put a click track at the beginning up here. So initially, I'm going to make some space for the click track. So while I'm in engrave mode, I'm going to come down here to master pages, the bottom right hand side, and double click on that one. An off topic question, sorry, how do I change the instrument names used, e.g. piano or clav instead of piano? I'll come back to that because I'll do that a bit later if that's all right. Is there a way to drag frames as a whole? Yes, if you use the edge of a frame, then you can move a whole frame around if you want to. Although mine's constrained at the moment by margins, but yes, you can drag a whole frame, but only on that one page, not to another page. Sorry, sidetracked. So so in here, I double clicked on my master page. So I'm now in the, I'm editing my master pages. I'm just going to make a bit more space at the top. So I'm just going to drag this down a bit to make some space. And then because I want the same space on the other side, I'll use this button at the top to copy the page layout so that it's the same both sides. And that's because you don't know if your new flow, if your new song is going to appear on this page or this page, but you want to make sure when it appears, it always uses the same one. So I'm going to close that. And because in layout options, it's set the default when you start in a new project, which is what I did here, the default is to start all new flows on a new page. It will use the first master pages. For any subsequent pages, it's using the default ones, and I haven't edited the default one yet. That's what's used here on my page 2. I'm just editing this one at the beginning where my titles are to make some space. So now, beginning of song 1, I have some space. Beginning of song 2, I have some space. At the beginning of song 3, I have some space. All because I've just edited my master pages and it's using that template. So now I want to put something in this space. So I'm going to go back to setup mode. What I want to put in there is a little, I suppose what I could do is in engrave mode, I could put a little text box in that says, there will be 4 beats of click track before this song starts. And you could even include that in a template if you wanted to. But the idea was to show it musically. So in setup mode, I'm going to press Shift P to add a new player. And I'm going to add a wood block. So I'll type wood, press enter. Here is my wood block. Now you asked about changing instrument names. I've got a wood block down here. I'm going to just click this little down arrow in setup mode. and change, click this little right arrow here and do edit names. And in here, I'm just going to change that to say click. So this is I'll change the full name and the short name. I don't need to change the plurals because I'm not going to have multiple wood blocks or click tracks at this point. So I can leave those. So now it says click, and it says click over here, and the layout has changed and says click. So das Enthi, there you go, how to change the names of things. Now, I don't want my wood block to appear in my songs. I only want it to appear in a particular place. So I'm going to select my 3 songs. So I'm shift selecting these 3 flows here, and I'm going to untick the click, so it doesn't appear anymore in any of those pieces. Okay. I'm going to create a new flow. So I'll press the little plus button down here, and I'm going to call this one 4/4. And in this 4/4 flow, and I selected it, so it's jumped to it, I'm going to untick the piano because I don't want the piano in it. I just want my click. And then if somebody's asked, why don't you just double click on a word to change it? Because that wouldn't change it in all the places. You'd only end up changing the instrument name in the place you'd clicked, for example. And you can have layouts that have different names to what the instrument actually is and that kind of thing. So it's not just one option, and you can do it all in setup mode for changing the instrument names. So my click here, I'm going to say this click is going to be in 4/4. And I'm going to say, let's just stick some notes in. So we'll stick 4 notes in. Maybe we'll stick 8 notes in. Maybe it's a 2-bar click. So select all of those notes. So I'm using shift select again. I'll right click, and from note head, choose X note heads. So that'll do for now, just to display a click track. Now I'm going to do the same again, create a new flow, and this one will be for 3/4. So I've got a 3/4 flow here, displayed here. I don't want my piano in it, so I'll untick the piano. And in here, I'm going to say that my click is going to be in 3/4, and so maybe there's 2 bars there as well. So we'll select those, right click, note head, X note heads. So now I've got 2 click track options. Okay, so in my full score at the moment, just to recap, I've got 3 songs in 3 individual flows, and I also have 2 click track options, which I don't really want to appear here. I want them to appear somewhere else. So I'm going to go into engrave mode and scroll back to the beginning. And I want the click track to appear in here. So with my frames option turned on, I'm going to click the music frame option here. I'm going to drag out a new music frame here. And into here, it's created a layout frame. So this is a master frame. This is the one that comes from the master page. But I'm just creating on this page only a layout frame. A is just because it's the first one that's been created. The next one will be B. And in here, I'm going to say I only want, this is a filter. I'm going to only say I only want to filter, I only want to show the 4/4 click. So here in my piece, now the piece is in 4/4, my click track is in 4/4. Now, annoyingly, because this is now the first frame on the page, this flow title has picked up the wrong one. So that should be flow 1 title, which is song 1, not this particular click track bit of music. And if I go to song 2, then I can do the same again. So I can drag out a new music frame. It's already chosen the 3/4 one, which is fine. This one happens to be LC. It's just carrying on. Don't worry about the naming of that one. L is because it's a layout frame. Change the title back because that one had changed annoyingly. And then song 3 is back in 4/4. So I can drag another one out here. And I can say filter, put that into 4/4. So now I have 4/4 here. And then we've still got them displaying here, and I don't want them here. So now what you do, in your master page again, so if I double click on my master pages, a master frame, this music frame here, uses all flows and all players, which isn't what we want. So I'm going to come into here and say that actually, I only ever want to include my songs, not the others. Not the click track ons. So now I've finished editing that one. I have song 1, and then I have song 2, and then I have, I need to change the name of that one. It needs to be flow 3 title. I have song 3, and then I have nothing else. So that is exactly what we wanted. And the ideal situation here is that now if you come to edit one of these, so if I said, actually, this has changed, it will also update any other place that that music exists. So that click track now, I can use that at the beginning of any songs. And I can make another one if I needed to. But when I make a change to it, it's only going to change that one. Now, if you're slightly ahead of me at this point, you might say, well, that's the full score. What happens to the parts? You can do the same kind of things if you want to in the parts as well. And this is probably more likely that you'll want to do it for parts and multiple parts. So what you might want to do in here is do a similar option. Don't start just editing this frame here. Go into your master pages. Now, this is the part master page. So if I double click this one, you see it looks almost the same. It has layout name at the top. And that can be different to instrument name, which is why the question a bit later. Hello to latecomers. There's people writing on the live chat. You can always watch this session later. It'll all be online later. So I'm making a bit of space here for my part. I'm going to copy that so it's always the same on both sides of the page. So I've now made some space here at the beginning of song 1, and I can drag out a music frame here. And into here, I can say I would like the 4/4 flow, please. But there's nothing here. And then you're thinking, so why is there nothing here? I've created a layout frame. It's in 4/4, players all. So why is my click not displaying in here? The reason is, if we go back to setup mode, that this is the piano layout here. If I click on the piano layout does not include the click player. So if I tick the click player, then it will appear. But otherwise, it wouldn't have done. So this is where some people can get tripped up a bit sometimes. So now, if I go back to engrave mode, you can see this is starting to work now because this player actually now also includes the click track. When I drag out the next one, say 3/4, there we go, and go to song 3 and drag out another one, and just say 4/4 again. There we go. And yes, you may need to change this. Actually, what would make sense is not to change it in there, would be to change it in here potentially, depending on how many songs you've got and everything else. But we'll go with it. So this is number 1. This is number 2, and number 3 we've done. And again, look, we have our click track displaying at the end because we've added in setup mode, because we've added the click. It's displaying at the end. So it's fine. You just come in here and say, actually, just only show me my songs, please. Never show me my click tracks in here. And it disappears. So now in my piano part, you can tell it says piano in the top left corner. I have my click tracks displaying the click options before the song starts. I also have the same in the full score. If I made any other instruments, then I could do the same. And combine those. And now I've started to also edit the master page, which is effectively the template for the parts. Then the new parts would all start to automatically have the space in, and then I can choose if I want to put the click at the beginning. Now, there may be other ways you could do this, and there may be other cases that you want to do. I'd love if people get in touch over the course of a month and say, hey, look, I found this, and I think this would be really useful for other people as well. Or if you think, as the case where somebody sent me a file and said, is there an option where I could do this in a simple way? And we'll have a think and then share some of these options with other people. Like I said, maybe in some cases there's a slightly different version of this that somebody wants to do. So please get in touch with us. My email address for any of these sessions is discoverdorico. It's all one word, discoverdorico @steinberg.de. And with all of these layout things and frames, yes, they can get a bit complicated, and you may initially start to get into a mess of how some of these things work. There's some more of Anthony's videos on YouTube if you want to look at those. But it is, we've put lots of options in so that you can do lots of real world cases of actual layouts and things. But it means it can get more complex initially. until you kind of start to get used to how some of these things work. If you also have a look, I mentioned this last month, and on our on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Dorico, I've put a couple of files up there recently in the files section. One is a getting started and note input PDF that I know some people had looked at before. But I thought it was worth putting it on there again. And also, because it's back to school kind of season, I've put one up there which is for creating worksheets. And that also goes into some of the options, even if you don't necessarily want to create worksheets all the time, but it's another option you can use for using and experimenting with frames and the layout frames and the master frames and how all of those kind of things work. One other case I wanted to show today was actually an orchestra and choir option. So this is a file that I will load, so I don't have to create everything from the beginning. But what we have in this piece, if I mouse space is having fun today. What I have in this piece, if we go to write mode, is we've got a choir, then we've got a piano, and then we've got all of the instruments for the orchestra underneath. And this is my full score layout at the moment. So I was writing this piece, I was copying this piece out, I was getting this piece from somewhere, however you want to create a piece. And I've put all of my instruments at the moment into the full score, but that's not how I want to print it. Sorry, just reading the comments a second. Can you remove the piano name from the score since it's a solo piece? Juan, yes, you can. And you could do that in just by double clicking on it and deleting it if you want to, or from the master page. I was actually intending that piece would have more instruments in it at the end. I just haven't created the other instruments, which is why I left the part name on. And somebody else has just asked a question. Is any chance to change the duration keys to Sibelius standards? 5 is quarter note. Yes, but don't. There's a really good reason why our notes work like that, because when you put them all in a row at the top of the keyboard, it makes sense that when you go down, the notes get shorter, and when you go up, the notes get longer. And the way we've mapped it means that all of the regular ones you want fit in the numbers that we have on a standard keyboard. But if you really, really want to change it, look in key commands, and you can change the shortcuts of your note durations if it's really annoying. I also know it's different to Finale. We didn't just make them deliberately different, but they are different. It doesn't take long to get used to them, as somebody's keys has just commented. Learn these keys. The shortcuts, they don't really take long to get used to. I understand if you're coming from another program, but don't just jump into changing all the shortcuts just because you're not really learning anything that way, and you just end up being even more of a mess, especially when you talk to other people and other people using Dorico. And as Frank's just said in the comments, and you finally don't need a numeric keypad any longer. And for those of us using a laptop, that's a real bonus. I don't have to plug in something else, especially when my laptop doesn't have that many USB ports. So anyway, sorry, in this particular piece, we've got this full score here. If I go to setup mode, my full score, I'll click on the layout over here, includes all of the instruments, but the piano is actually just a piano reduction, just to use in rehearsals with the choir. So I'm going to untick that, and the piano part has disappeared from the score now. So now I can print my score without the piano getting in the way, but the piano part is still available if I want it. Also, what I want to do is when I rehearse with the choir, I click this add score custom score layout button down here. There's an add full score instrumental part and add custom score layout. So I'll add a new custom score, and I can select any of the instruments or players that I want to be in here. I should stop calling them instruments, they're players. So I'll click the soprano, the alto, we want the tenor, we want the bass, and I also want the piano. So now, and also I can double click my layout down here, since we were asking about changing names. Let's say choir and piano. So I have a choir and piano layout now. And you'll find if you do this, then when you switch to the choir and piano layout, you go, oh, there's no music. Why is there no music here? It's because when you're in setup mode, you've said, I've created a new choir and piano layout and some new players. But what haven't we done? We haven't ticked this box here to say which flow you want to be in it. So I've ticked the box to say, flow 1, please go into this layout. So now I have a new layout for choir and piano. And I have now got the instruments that I wanted in there, so SATB and piano. If I just zoom out a bit, actually, could probably do with using some of this extra white space at the bottom, really, because that's a lot of page turns. So I'll go into my layout options here, and there's not really a lot of difference between a full score and a custom score. It probably is. I can't remember off the top of my head what the difference would be. It would be, no, can't remember off the top of my head what it would be. And if I go down, what are we doing? Oh, yes. So the music wasn't really fitting. So I'm going to change the size here and press apply. And I've now changed the staff size down just very slightly, and now the music fits. And you'll notice that if I move this back onto the screen, in my layout options, that because I'd selected the choir and piano layout, I'm only affecting this one. I've not changed the size of the score. I've not changed the size of any of the other parts. I could select them in here if I wanted to. And there is an option here to select all full score layouts, all part layouts, and all custom score layouts. Oh, here's a difference, Anders. If you create a custom score layout, it doesn't by default put everything in it. If you create a new full score layout, it will by default put all of the instruments back in it, and then you have to untick all the ones you don't want. I wanted to just add a few, so I created a custom score layout and just ticked the ones that I wanted to show, because that was easier, because I only wanted 5 this time. So I've chosen a different staff size here for just that layout. I could leave this dialog open, but I'll close it. So now I've got all the music fitting much better for a rehearsal of just the choir and the piano in this particular case. So I just thought of layout-wise, that one doesn't include frames at all, but it's another kind of extra layout option that somebody was asking about. I'm making separate parts. At the moment, because although we have plans for kind of divisi type of options, you may well end up creating full scores that have, for example, 2 flutes on the same staff at the moment, and individual parts which are 2 separate flutes. And you can control those as to, and copy and paste the music between them at the moment. And you can do that in setup mode and choose which instruments appear in your score and which instruments you use for parts. So there's various other layout options and things in there. There's a question about resetting layout and importing music XML. Actually, I think I saw your post earlier on the forum, Keys. I'm quite interested to see the 2 files. I think you were importing a MIDI file and a music XML file, and getting some different options between them. And I wonder what else was in the file. So actually, maybe if you email me that one and I'll have a look at it, maybe we can look at that in more detail in the next session. Can you have different staff sizes in one layout? Yes, you can. If you put in a staff type, a system break. So if I go into engrave mode and put in a system break here, I can select a system break, and I can then change the space size in here from the system break onwards. So if I choose here, oh, actually, yeah, it's a bit much probably. So now I've got one option here and one option over here. It's updating a bit slowly on my computer, wasn't it? So what happens when you run live video at the same time? So now from this point on, I've got a different size, and I could enter another system break or frame break, and I could select that system break or frame break, and then choose a different staff size from there as well. So if that's useful. Why is the bracket for the voices only SAT and not B included? Probably because I've imported this file from somewhere else, and I have a sneaky suspicion that that's not a bass singer, and it's actually probably a bass instrument that's been added lyrics to. It was probably when it was imported incorrectly. That would be my guess at the moment. But well spotted. This bracket doesn't go all the way down to where it should be. So I've been rattling on for a while, so I'll stop here, and unless there's and I'll be reading some of the comments, so if there's other things I can answer them in there. So I should point out, because somebody mentioned on Facebook in the last week or so. For those who don't know, if you haven't bought Dorico already, the current cross grade, it was extended, but the date for the cross grade ending. So if you have Sibelius, Finale, or Notion, and you want to buy Dorico at a reduced price, then the cross grade, there are reduced cross grade prices for that, but the cross grade expires on the 30th of September. I know Daniel's mentioned that we are working on other things. I'm not, I don't work on it, but the developers are working on some new features which will include drum notation, orchestral cues, and keyboard fingering. It's all quite exciting. I can't show you anything yet. It's all very early days, but there will be another update at some point. I think we've said in the autumn. You might be wondering, well, if there's a cross grade that ends on the 30th of September, they're not necessarily related. And anyway, if you buy Dorico now, then the updates are all free, so it makes no difference. There's a possibility the update would come out after the 30th of September, I suppose. But if you buy Dorico now, it doesn't matter. If those things are important to you, then you'll get the next update free anyway. If there are tips that you would like to share with other people, then please let me know. discoverdorico@steinberg.de is the email address for these sessions. Anytime during the month, I mean, you can ask me questions if you like, but if you think there's a useful tip or something you'd like to share, if there's a useful layout thing that you have found or you would like to know how to do and you think it would be useful that other people can do it as well, then send me an email and we'll have a look at that. Maybe we can look at that in the next session. I try and keep all of these sessions, or I have tried to keep them all to the last Thursday in the month so that we know roughly when they are. I'm not guaranteeing I can continue doing that on Thursdays, the last Thursday in the month, but the next one will be, which is the 28th of September. So it'll be the same time, whichever time zone you're in, but on the 28th of September, Thursday. In the meantime, if you haven't already, come join in on the Facebook group if you've got any questions on there. There's now about 2,500 people who can answer questions. So facebook.com/groups/Dorico. And as I said, I put some new files up there for getting started if you're at the very beginning, and also for creating worksheets if you want to play out with some other layout type options, and for back to school teachers. There's lots more videos, of course, about all the new things and how to do lots of things in lots of different modes on youtube.com/Dorico. And if you subscribe to that channel, then when new videos go up, then, on any of the modes we haven't covered yet, for example, play mode options or more engraving options, then you'll be notified about those. And of course, keep up to speed with what Daniel is talking about on the blog, blog.steinberg.net. So thank you for listening to this session. I hope you can join us for the next session, and get in touch in the meantime if there's any questions and things that you have on using Dorico. Thank you very much. Bye.